After blast, Lebanon has less than a month's grain reserves.
Here's a summary of the article.
Beirut, Dubai, Lebanon's main grain silo at Beirut port was destroyed in a blast, leaving the nation with less than a month's reserves of the grain but enough flour to avoid a crisis, the economy minister said on Wednesday. Raoul Nerma told Reuters a day after Tuesday's devastating explosion that Lebanon needed reserves for at least 3 months to ensure food security and was looking at other storage areas. He said grain reserves in Lebanon's remaining silos stood at a bit less than a month, but said the destroyed silos had only held 15,000 tons of the grain at the time, much less than capacity, which one official put at 120,000 tons. Ahmed Tamer, the director of Tripoli Port, Lebanon's second biggest facility, said his port did not have grain storage but cargoes could be taken to warehouses 2 kilometers away. People are extremely poor, it's increasingly difficult for anyone to buy food, and the fact that Beirut is the largest port in Lebanon makes it a very bad situation, she said. Reserves of flour were sufficient to cover market needs for a month and a half, and there were 4 ships carrying 28,000 tons of wheat heading to Lebanon, Ahmed Hattat, the head of the Wheat Importers Union, told Al Akhbar newspaper. Lebanon is trying to transfer immediately 4 vessels carrying 25,000 tons of flour to the port in Tripoli, one official told LBCI News Channel.
This post received a score of 4,500, with an upvote ratio of 98%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Yeah, the big yellow building right by the blast was a grain silo. I initially thought it was a hotel or something.
The bright side is that the building deflected a bunch of the blast. Probably saved a bunch of lives.
Yeah, looking at the aftermath pics it's quite clear. Large quantities of grain is a huge explosion stopper.
And large quantities of grain can actually cause massive explosions. Had a massive grain elevator explode here in Kansas. It was scary.
It's the dust that explodes, not the grain. Usually a secondary explosion is worse than the first at a grain elevator. The first stirs all the settled dust into the air and then ignites once it's airborne. I'm guessing the dust at that elevator did explode, there just wasn't any way to see it since it was in the middle of 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate blowing up. Concrete elevators like that usually have blast doors on the structure to give the explosion a place to expand without blowing up the whole structure.
You are correct. The dust caused the explosion. The grain caused the dust. I just didn't want to get technical. Thanks for the better explanation.
Shipping disruptions, slowdown, locusts eating crops, Chinese crop flooding among other issues including this explosion so suspect food prices to expand with demand.
Rising food prices contributed to the Arab Spring. Revolution comes when doing nothing becomes more perilous than taking action.
Revolution starts when the food runs out. All the violent regime changes in the last 100 years came from people literally starving.
You're ignoring all the military coups where someone wanted power and figured that they could simply take it by force.
I don't think that counts as revolution in the colloquial sense.
The comment I replied to said, violent regime change, not revolution.
That grain silo probably saved hundreds of lives, shielding half the city from the worst of the blast.
Not sure if the building made that much of a difference for 3,000 tons of nitrate. The shockwave was felt 200 to 300 kilometers away from the blast site.
It remained standing, looks like the buildings behind it did much better than the others.
Such an interesting and at the same time horrifying picture. The power of that blast boggles my mind. And what it did to those who were very close to ground zero too. I always imagine dying from an unnatural cause as having at least this, oh shit, that's it, moment. But if you died from being close to that explosion, you were properly utterly annihilated before realizing that you were even in danger.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.